And let me invite Ross, with who we're going to review together Jamrock Auction, a platform for putting to bid on jobs, right? Am I getting it right? Perfect. That sounds great. So thanks for joining. As time is limited, I suggest we get started. So first thing we did is we had a quick look to the Google Crocs report that consolidates the core vitals, which are essential for measuring web performance and have an impact on SEO. And here we can see that your website is standing in a good place, of a good job. But what it informs us as well is that apparently, at least on Chrome, yes, it doesn't capture iOS Safari traffic, but you get a majority of traffic coming from mobile web. Are we getting this right? Is this order of magnitude like 2/3, 1/3?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Cool. So in that case, what I suggest in that we don't look at the desktop, we go straight into mobile experience. So this is where our recommendation, once you make the changes, can have the highest impact. How does that sound to you?
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Perfect. So for this, I use Apple iOS iPhone simulator, and I'm emulating an iPhone SE. So I didn't pick an iPhone 15 Pro or Plus Max on purpose, because ultimately we want to make sure that your website is accessible to a majority of users. And so the SE is the smallest form factor within like modern phones released a few years ago, right? So here we are on the home page. So first of all, what's great is you have a predominant search box. So that's great because we know on e-commerce websites that like people commonly engage with search for over 60% of the sessions when they land on the home page. So that's good. What you could do here is that you could make it even more predominant, maybe playing better with color contrast. It's visible, but you could make it stand more. You may notice that market leaders, like large websites, they use like maybe a very contrasted background, like Amazon, they use dark blue, Target.com, they use dark red, and so on. So it's really kind of stand out, and search stands out thanks to the white input. Then you have like some banners which are good because they don't take too much of the space. Very quickly we get to navigating the main category. This is really important, not only for helping people getting quick access to what you offer, but also making an understanding of what you're offering, right? And so from that standpoint, you do it well. There might be there is an opportunity to maybe kind of polish the layout, rework some margins and so on to really make the reading even more fluid. Here, like we have the category, but like the spacing doesn't inform me if it belongs to what is displayed below or if it belongs to what is displayed above. So there is an opportunity to polish the UI through some information architecture pass and UI design. But otherwise, functionally speaking, you get what is needed here. So let's move on. Then you have some call to action. It's not necessarily clear that I can click on those. So maybe you want to also complement that with some visuals. You have some kind of carousel, but while it's there, we can ask ourselves, is that something that is usable as we wish to be, right? Because we see that the text is also, there's large amount of text. Text covers over almost 50% of the screen. There's lots of items, so maybe like the carousel thing, you want to have it underneath. But ultimately, you foster you help users to move toward discovery, right? New things, you show products up. From that standpoint, it's good. So overall, you have what it takes to get a good homepage. Probably it would deserve like some extra work on the design to make it more polished and probably reflect better the quality that you want for your brand. Because something that we know it's even more true in luxury, but people, they make an opinion out of the aesthetic of something, right? And so we're more inclined of maybe there's like some bugs or some stuff that don't work as expected if the aesthetic is good, but ultimately they attach an opinion, an image to the aesthetic. And so if you want to drive a high value image, you probably want to also take that into account. Do you have any question or thoughts on the homepage before we move on to
that's great feedback. Thank you.
All right. So here we have the search. Let's engage with it. So the first thing I would say is like, we don't necessarily have the keyboard. Let's open the keyboard, because keyboard takes like, once we have the header of the browser plus keyboard, it takes up to 40%. There's only 40% of the screen remaining for what we're interested in, like results. So here we can see we use Algolia autocomplete.js library that puts you already in a good shape, in the sense that it leverages the full size of the screen, so that's good. Where you could probably iterate is having an explicit placeholder. We don't know it just looking at here, but you actually provide results for various type of contents. I can search for auctions, I can search for categories, I can search for articles, and there's no way for me to know that at that stage. So one way could be to have an explicit placeholder, so where you inform users that you could say search for auctions, category, articles, and so this way I know what to expect. You probably want to as well to make the contrast higher, because it doesn't necessarily match accessibility requirements. Well, you do provide lots of spacing, so you have an empty state, so that's good. I can easily resume a search. That's great. There might be something to rework in the implementation. I get some duplicates, maybe because I have a white space, so maybe there's some trimming you want to do, there's an optimization. But ultimately, that's good, because as a first-time user, I don't get to do a cold start. I have like some popular searches I can leverage, and also I can have like some peaks. But as you can see on that screen, I don't get to see the peaks. I'd like to get it just right above the fold, right? So it's something you want to consider. And ultimately, you still have this, do I need help? Whereas it's not in context, right? There's no need for those two things. Right here, I'm searching, so it creates visual noise more than it might help. Let's pick Sapphire, because I'm into like, I pick one. So it filled my query, that's good. We see highlighting on query suggestion. It's worth considering inverted highlighting, as we can find on Google. This is like helps mentally focusing on what's left to read. It can help reducing cognitive load. It's also something you can do with the library easily. And ultimately, you may want to get rid of the first section title, because we know those are suggestions, right? This would allow you to get the product category right above the fold, which are not visible as of today, at least on this form factor, right? I have no clue that those things are hiding behind. Then you see, apparently I tested on my phone as well to confirm, but apparently there's a bug. So an implementation bug, in the sense that if I tap on the second query suggestion, it doesn't submit the suggestion. It's expected to pre-fill the query if I tap on the tap ahead icon on the right. It's mostly known by advanced users. It's a minority, maybe 10% of users. But when I actually tap on the query, same as on Google or any other website, I expect the search to be submitted, which is not the case. And that forces me to actually press search. So from that standpoint, it may create friction. There's some implementation glitch. Any question before we move to the product listing page?
No, that's really good.
All right, great. So here we are. We search for Sapphire and some other keywords. So you have this idea of persisting the query. You have this idea of users would iterate. That's good. But why showing like it can come as confusing for users? Why showing it in two different search inputs? So I understand that there may have been like some implementation challenges, and maybe you tried at first to have it here. It's feasible. I can follow up in the chat to provide you with the guide, but you would use a virtual search box, and you can combine instant search and autocomplete.js. So there's a guide. Let me follow up with you once we are done on the review, but there's a guide that shows you. So ideally, and I think you're getting it, as I'm explaining it, the idea is to put that query in the main search box. So once I press again, the search box is pre-filled with my query, and this way I can easily iterate at lower cost. Where today, it's on me to actually refine and just tap, and maybe I want to remove here, and I need to kind of position with the keyboard, and so not only it will reduce like cognitive load wise to search box, but it will also ease the interaction. And we do know that on ecom, for instance, users on a session, they iterate over their query over 2 times per session. So it's very common.
Yeah, okay.
This will allow you to actually consolidate the space here. We know we're on the search page. You probably want to put more emphasis on the product. This is what matters to us. Or even auctions if you want to really reinforce this idea that this is an auction and not a product you buy. And you want to make that number very clear and visible, because this is based on this that users will define if they want to filter or not, or if they're ready to look at the listing. Here, there is 13,000 products. There's a chance that I'm not looking at what I'm looking for. I may need to further filter, right? So you have this filter button. It opens a panel. Good. Sometimes you have like some. So what you may want to consider here is to collapse the non-primary filters, because this one you can get understanding at a glance. Here I have to scroll, and again I get those widgets which are kind of not in context, but it's hard for me to understand what's available, versus if it would be collapsed, I can more easily understand what's available, expand, and just go with it. For certain ones, like such as maybe types, or where there's lots of values possible, like category, you also may want to consider like using search for facet values. So users can actually search textually for certain values. That's very common on brands, for instance, on regular e-com websites. And one trick, UI trick, is to actually make the panel 80% width or 85. This way, whenever I refine, I get to see the updates behind the scene, because Algolia brings you back the results instantly. So you get to see the results. When this is done, what you want to do is to actually persist the active filters on top of the listing. So I do understand what's been applied, and I can actually remove them one by one, or remove them all with a clear all button. That's for the listing. As you have articles, you may also want to consider injecting kind of editorial content or banners that directs to some blog posts, or maybe kind of speak about your brand and your the value of your brand and so on in between products, because people, there's a chance they don't go explore your articles on purpose. So there's an opportunity here exposing them to those in context. And so for the more or the people who are already well aware of Algolia, it's something that can be done with rules as well. So in terms of pagination, and I see the time flying, it's not necessarily the easiest to use as of today. Regular pagination works, but it's pretty small. And so something you may want to consider, something more modern, and that becomes like de facto more of a convention those days, is a show more with progress bar, right? So you just invite users to explore more. And that's a great pattern versus infinite scrolling that leads to endless scrolling, because it helps user to make a mental pause. Am I done? I've seen maybe 30, 40 products. Like, do I need to further refine, or do I want to see more? So that's what I would encourage you to have a look to. And again, this can be done with the Algolia Instant Search library. And finally, if we go on a product card, on a product detail page, so you have this breadcrumb. Maybe you can simplify it. Maybe you can like put 3 dots, and I get to see the full breadcrumb, and like visually, ultimately, where you want to land is on the product. You get this very visual gallery. That's great. That's definitely the recommendation. So you get to see them all. Then I found it. You do have product recommendation, which is also something Algolia can help you with our product Algolia recommend. But while the best practice is to have it at the bottom of the page, as a user, I wonder if it's really necessarily needed for me to get to see all the content by default. I wonder if it could be an option where I get to have all those different boxes, shipping, store, recent feedback, and so on, collapse by default. Maybe we just keep details. And this way I can more easily access to similar products. And for this, you could do recommendation based on looking similar or like content based.
That's a really good
That's pretty much for, yeah, that's.
We lost you, Alex.
All right.
You're back.
You hear me back?
Yes, you're back.
All right, cool. So right on time. Sorry, rushing a bit, but do you have any question? May I move to the summary slide we have?
Yes,
Maybe
please.
Any question, Ross?
No, go to the summary. Thank you.
All right, cool. So in a nutshell, where you could help unlock additional value in the different screen we've seen would be by making the placeholder more informative, so you can really help users engage more easily with different type of content you have. Fix the query suggestion selection. That's a big one, as you have 2/3 of your traffic on mobile. I think if I would have one thing to recommend you doing right after this call, is probably to look at this bug, because it may disrupt many users in their flow. Allow users to easily iterate on their search. We've talked about it, like 2 search boxes. You could combine them both into one, and I'm going to follow up with the link in the chat. And then really polish the experience on the filtering, helping them easily narrow down the set of results, like collapsing filters, showing active filters on the top of the panel, and improve readability of the product detail page, which can come as overwhelming today, but you already have this collapsible mechanism in place. So one thing maybe to test out is to collapse them by default. So that's what I'd like to share with you today. And we're just scratching the surface. This is what I'd like to add. We have, if you'd like to find more about those best practices, I can only invite you to explore two of our main resources on that topic. The first one is our UI kit in Figma that gives you a screen in context, right? Like we put screens with what we recommend as best practices, and then you can see those screens with more explanation as part of a tailored pass in the Academy made of 30 minutes of video around UX from the home page to the cart page, along with exploring more content on the Academy, so you can actually train yourself on more concept and knowledge around how to actually leverage Algolia to really unlock value for your users.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thanks for submitting your website, and I'm going to follow up with you on the chat, and we look forward to seeing how you can iterate on your implementation over time.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ross.
Thank you very much, Ross.